All right, so this is advice for 18-year-old me, part 2. I actually wrote some things down this time, just trying to get things out of my brain into video, into text, to hopefully help other people and maybe even help future self looking back on this. I'm 25 now, so again, this is advice for 18-year-old me. So number one thing that I wrote down is listening to elders or listening to people that are older than you. When I was 18, I thought 25 was old. So you can imagine what I thought 50 and 60 was. And big mosquitoes, geez. And what I mean by this with listening to elders is I still believe, everything should be taken with a grain of salt, which I'll get into in the second thing that I had written down. But I used to think that people older than me just said certain things for the sake of being older than me. And now that I'm 25, what I believe to be old when I was 18, I realize I don't say things just because I'm old or just because something magical happens at 25 that you start saying these things. I say these things because I believe them to be true from my life experience, and therefore I can extrapolate that what the 25-year-olds of my time said, they were also saying because of their own experiences. And one of the things that really sticks out that people older than me would always say is life is made up of the little moments. It's not made up of the big moments. Big moments being high school graduation, college graduation, if you're in sports, like certain meets or races, in my case, what else? Like certain traveling moments, right? First time going to France or first time going to Germany, things like that. Those are all cool, right? But life is truly made up of the little moments. And I think that was something I was kind of in denial of. I was like, what do you mean the little moments? Like waking up and serving breakfast, or making pancakes or biking to school or whatever it is, right? Being in traffic. Like, is that really what life is? And from a percentage wise, it is. And that's something I was kind of in denial of for quite some time. And I kind of go into this more with the second thing I have. I guess backtracking a little bit, with that life is made up of little moments idea, for the longest time, from probably about 19 to like 23, 18 to 23, I was in this mindset of like, life isn't meant to be fun or enjoyable until XYZ is achieved. Like, once I get a good paying job, then I'll be happy. Once I get married, then I'll be happy. Once I have kids, then I'll be happy. Or once, one that comes to mind for me is like, once I make $5,000 a month online, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be financially secure. And with every single one of these landmarks, some of which I've done, some of which I haven't, you realize like you accomplish it and then life goes on. Like, there isn't, for the most part, maybe one of these milestones is life-changing, it shatters your world in a good way in that moment. So far, everything I've experienced, like, it's been the little moments that have built up what my life is. It has not been the big moments. So that's a big, big, big one to take away. Life is meant to be enjoyed at every step of the way. Life is meant to be playful and fun and exploratory at every single second of the entire journey. Sure, there's going to be sadness. Sure, there's going to be happiness. There's going to be triumph. There's going to be failure. But that doesn't take away from the fact that every moment can be joyful. So that's number one, number one. Number two is, this is a pretty classic sort of teenager thing, right? You think you have it all figured out. And in retrospect, I think something that would have helped 18-year-old me understand this further is this idea that I've written down. We look to other people, in the nutrition space, in the health space, the fitness space, the political space, whatever. Some of us will look up to those people and think, oh, that person has it all figured out. That person has it figured out. That person's diet is the one, it's the right one. It's the right diet, right? And as you get older, you realize that literally no one has it all figured out. There is not one nutrition expert, politician, engineer, philosopher, whatever, that has it all figured out. It does not exist. And if we can find that to be true, we can also find that no one of us learning from those people is going to have it all figured out. It's impossible, mathematically. All of those people that we look up to were at one point 20 years old, 18 years old. And at one point, they were looking up to other people, thinking that maybe one of them has it figured out. Or if not, that they would figure it out because they're studying everyone else that doesn't have it figured out. But this cycle goes on forever. Every single person that is now an expert is now a mentor to others, was at one point 18 years old and had other mentors. And they thought they would all have it figured out from all of them. And we know to be true that none of these people have it figured out. So from a logical perspective, I think that would have helped me a lot at 18 years old. It's like, it's one thing for an older person to tell you you'll never have it figured out. And you'll probably brush it off and say like, oh, you're dumb, you're old, I'll figure it all out. But logically, literally mathematically, statistically, like, it does not make sense for any one of us to ever have anything figured out. Now, one can look at that from the perspective of, that sucks, I wish I could be the one to figure it all out. Or we can look at it from, it is almost our duty on this earth to make an attempt, not necessarily to become closer to figuring it all out, but to ask better questions to allow others to carry on the work for you, to go deeper and wider in every piece of work that you're looking into. That's advice number 2. Advice number 3 is, I'm getting murdered right now. Advice number 3, piece number 3, is to spend more time alone and or doing nothing. I grew up watching a decent amount of TV. I didn't play much video games, but not a crazy amount. Maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. At one point, the rule in the house was 30 minutes a day during weekdays, which I hated at the time. But even as I've gotten older and like, I've done more productive things, working out, going on walks, cleaning my room, whatever. I think I've found that there is also an immense amount of value in intentionally doing nothing, like sitting in the sun, no music, no book, no one else with you, no conversations, just sit there. If you fall asleep, cool. If you don't, cool. You stare at the sky, watch the sunset, lay in the grass, go to the park with your dog and like throw a ball around and just kind of ponder in the nothingness. There's so much value in being able to do that because for a couple reasons, I think. One, it actually allows you to think more clearly when you are in a position to need to think, whether it's for work or personal life. But 2, I think it makes you less controllable. We live in an age of attention economy. Like, eyeballs are money, basically across the board, no matter what industry you're in, for the most part. If you can learn to be okay with nothing, with no music, with no entertainment, with no stimulus, you're immediately less controllable. Like, you're less susceptible to advertising. You're less susceptible to media scares, to psyops, whatever you want to call it, right? That's a big, big one. And the modern world does not make that easy for us. If we were living in a rural environment, it would be more than normal to say, yeah, I spent 2 hours laying in the grass, fell asleep for half of it, right? Very difficult to do in modern society. Fortunate enough to have a backyard here. A lot of us here in the house will sometimes just lay in the grass for who knows how long, fall asleep in the sun, whatever. Very, very good practice to have, which I didn't really do at all when I was 18. I would go as far to say that meditation is too much. In my opinion, I'm not saying meditation is bad, but like going into sitting in the sun with this intention of, I must meditate, I must focus on my breath, I must this, I must that. Not saying it's bad, but to cultivate a more frequent practice of just doing nothing, just sitting there. Whatever crosses your mind, cool. If you fall asleep, cool. If you stare at a fish for 20 minutes, cool. It's all good, right? Next piece of advice is, more often than not, travel is not going to solve your problems. It's not going to give you the answers you've been looking for. This is something I experienced a few times. I did some Europe traveling when I was 18, then again when I was 23, and now I'm actually going to go off again for about 3 to 4 months to Europe. I think my mindset going into this one, I know my mindset into this one is very, very different than it's been in the past. And I think in the past, I was very much looking for like, not a solution, but an answer, thinking that bouncing around hostels in Portugal, Germany, Croatia is just going to find these answers. Dude, get one of these mosquitoes. And I don't want to say that travel is not going to give you answers, but I think travel alone will not. Most of the time will not. If you have a different intention with the travel, and you're going into it thinking like, I'm going to start surfing, I'm going to get a job doing this, what I love, whatever, I think it's a different case. But I found for myself that thinking that I would find some kind of magical experience somewhere, and it just never happened. Oh, I'm going to get... Dude. There's like 8 swarming my calves. Basically, physical escape is not the answer. You're not going to find what you're looking for from just going to new locations. I got 2 more. I'm going to try to blaze through these. I'm going to start with the second one. So, this is something I'm still working on, and I know my parents are probably going to watch this, and hopefully, I don't know what they'll think of it, but realizing that, again, I'm not saying I'm good at this. Realizing that my role as a son is not, for the most part, to educate my parents. My parents are in their 60s. They're retiring. It is not my place, for the most part, again, I'm not perfect, to educate them. It's not my place to tell them they're doing this right or they're doing this wrong or they need to do this and they need to do that. They've lived 3 more lifetimes than I have, or 2 more. And if I were a parent, maybe I would appreciate some level of education from my son, but there's definitely a limiter to that. There's a don't go beyond this threshold, and I've definitely pushed it in the past, and maybe still do to some degree. And yeah, my role as a son is to, I don't know how else to put it, make them feel as good of a parent as possible. No one's perfect parents, and no one's perfect. No, how do I say this? No one has perfect parents, and no one has perfect children. No one has a perfect relationship with their children, and no one has a perfect relationship with their parents. I don't think it exists. But you can only go so far with educating your parents. It's a much bigger role for parents to educate their kids, and most of that happens in probably 0 to 10, 15 years old. So I'm beyond that for the most part. Anyway, I would say of all the pieces of advice, that's the one I'm working on the most. And then the last one is to create more. A question I've been posed mainly by my mentor Keegan Smith, but others as well, is like, if money, finances was no longer a problem, it was no longer an obstacle, and you had all the money you ever needed, right? You're making $50K a month, you can live wherever you want, you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, everything. Then what do you do with life? And that's a position a lot of millionaires find themselves in. It's like they've made all the money, but they have a horrible relationship with their wife or their husband, their kids, their community. They don't have a friend group. They don't have any skills. They're not athletic. So by create more, I don't just mean like creating content like this. Also just create stuff. Carve spoons. Build a nice backyard. Build a physique. Learn a language. Learn to juggle. Learn to do handstands. Learn to do a backflip. Build a deck. Take it from me, deck building is very fun. I don't know if I said it. Travel the world. Experience new cultures. That's creativity. To learn a new language is creating new models in your head. To build a deck is to create a new skill with tools, with woodworking, spatial awareness, logic, geometry, math, engineering. It's all creating. And in the case of content, even if I don't really have intentions of making money from any of these videos. Like, I have 400 subscribers, get like 50 views. Doesn't matter. I don't care. But it's fun. It's fun seeing 2 comments of 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds saying like, oh, this is super cool. I didn't know that. Or I learned a lot. I'm getting murdered. Create more. Like, I'm not saying this is an easy task, but if you have the mental ability, the mental capacity to put yourself in a position where you're making $50,000 a month, mentally, and ask yourself, what would you do with that money? Okay, you would stay in the nicest Airbnbs and travel the world by yourself or with your spouse. Cool. Then what? Okay, you'd go to the nicest restaurants. Cool. You'd get the nicest bottle of wine. Awesome. You'd go surfing on the private beaches. Amazing. Then what? Then what do? You're just going to surf every day? Okay. What next? Are you going to build a project that you're passionate about? Or are you just going to like surf, surf, surf? And I'm not claiming I have the answer. Dude, oh my God. And I'm not claiming that I'm not at 50K a month yet. But I'm trying my best to put myself in a mental position of, if I was there, would I be satisfied with everything else in my life? Would I have all of my expenses covered and then some, and still be missing something? And I think, oh, dude. And I think the answer is probably yes to some degree. There's much more that I need to create and explore and build and develop internally, in mind, body, spirit, faith, all sorts of things. Because without that, the money can be covered, but life is still going to be quite empty, from what I've heard of people older than me and much, much wealthier than me. So anyway, it's a bit all over the place. That was part 2, advice for my 18-year-old self. Advice for part 3, figure out some kind of natural mosquito repellent, because this is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Going to Latvia tomorrow. Well, I'll be there like 24 hours after I leave tomorrow. Super cold. I'm sure I'll film some videos there. Yeah, let the travels begin. 2 to 3 weeks in Latvia, then either Montenegro or Portugal, then probably Croatia, then I don't know, then Norway, then I don't know. There's a lot on the agenda, a lot to do, a lot to build, a lot to create, a lot to develop internally and externally. It's going to be good. What I'm saying right now is mostly for future me. Completely irrelevant to the video. Anyway, thank you for watching, and drop a comment if this was interesting.